Welcome to the Not Just a Pony Ride podcast, presented to you by Hetra University. If you've landed here, you're probably passionate about how horses help people. Whether you're an instructor, therapist, in the business, or have experienced equine-assisted services yourself, we're glad you're here. Join us as we talk about the benefits, the science, to-dos, how-tos, and all of the reasons why what we do is so much more than just a pony ride. And now, from the Hetra campus in Gretna, Nebraska, here's your host, occupational therapist Katie King.
Hey everyone, I am so excited to share these next two episodes with you. Kathy Alm, the CEO of PATH International, penciled me into her schedule today, and boy did I learn a lot. For those of you that don't know, PATH International is a membership organization who does a lot for our profession. They rigorously develop standards and do credentialing and develop a lot of education for us too. Their link is in the show notes below, so check that out. But today I asked Kathy a lot about her personal development and professional development, everything in between. Her journey to where she is today is incredibly interesting and really full of good advice. So it was so good, in fact, that we had to split her episode into two parts. So please come back next week for more from Kathy and PATH International as well. Enjoy. Hello, Kathy. Welcome.
Thank you, Katie. It's good to be here.
We have Kathy Alm. She is the CEO of PATH, and that's the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International. Kathy, why don't you tell us a little bit about who PATH is and kind of what your job is with PATH?
So I am the CEO of PATH International, and PATH International, as you said, the Professional Association of Therapeutic Horsemanship International, is an international association. We accredit centers, we credential, certify professionals doing equine-assisted services, providing equine-assisted services. And we also provide training and education. And I think one of the most important things is we set standards. We have set standards. When you ask almost any PATH International credentialed professional or center or a member, what is one of the most important things about PATH International for them, they will say it's our standards. And we have a very rigorous process that the standards go through before they become a standard. And our centers and our credentialed professionals commit to meeting these standards in order to ensure both safety and optimal outcomes for any type of equine-assisted services that are being provided.
Hetra has been a premier accredited center with PATH for a number of years now, and we really appreciate the guidance that PATH International provides for us as far as safety standards and, how things should be done, could be done. It gives us a good place to start just for the safety of our participants and our horses too.
Yeah, yes, and it's a very important part of being professional and providing the best service you possibly can provide. The other piece to PATH International is we're a membership organization, which means that we work really hard to be a leader in this industry, and that we work on a lot of initiatives that benefit the industry as a whole. So along with the standards and the credentialing, it's on us to raise awareness for equine-assisted services and to have the public understand, well, what is this thing that is down the street? I see kids on horseback, what's going on? But that we raise the awareness that it's not pony rides, that this is a professional service, and here are the benefits. And that we also run and lead initiatives that benefit the entire industry. One of those being most recently leading an initiative for optimal terminology. You and I offline talked a little bit about how important terminology is, and we just recognized that unclear terminology was essentially hurting everybody. It meant that even though there's been some research done on the efficacy of the different types of services, you couldn't look at the body of research and say, oh, wow, here's 6 research projects that prove that therapy incorporating horses has this impact, because people used the same term and meant different things, or they used different terms to mean the same things. And so there was no way to look at a whole body of research. And funders were very confused. The VA right now, for example, funds therapy incorporating horses through their adaptive sports program. So the public doesn't necessarily know what type of service they're getting because of unclear terminology. So long story short, PATH International led a 2-year initiative, consensus building initiative, pulling in representatives from organizations all across the country, as well as individuals representing different types of areas. And this culminated in a published consensus document where we have the majority of organizations and individuals signing off on, okay, this is the terminology to use. So I just use that as an example of the other part to PATH International, which is initiatives and making a difference for the industry as a whole.
It is so important how, search terms, and that's through research is one thing, but that's anything. People might go to Google and try to find us or find, another center. And if our lingo is not all matching well, then how do you know what you're getting, or how do you even know what to search? And so having us all on the same page is super, super important.
It's very important. And part of that optimal terminology paper were terms to quit using. One of the favorite terms of media is equine therapy. That doesn't exist. That there is no such thing as equine therapy unless maybe you're talking about massage for horses or something like that, right?
Right. When I started as an occupational therapist, I made a jump from clinical therapy to working with HETRA. And I tried to explain it to people, and they're like, so do you do therapy with the horses or therapy with people? And it opens a whole nother conversation.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
Tell us a little bit about you specifically as the CEO. What do your job duties entail? How do you man the ship for PATH International?
My job duties kind of run the gamut. It is my job to do everything from support the board. PATH International has a great, very hardworking board of directors. They're a governing board. And so I support the board in the work that they do as they set the vision and the direction for PATH International. And then it's my job to operationalize their vision and their direction and work with the staff to execute on the strategic plan. And that strategic plan guides everything that we do. And I believe it's my job to make sure that the staff have the resources and the training and the support they need in order to be able to execute their job. So that's sort of operationally what my job is. My job is also outward facing. So it's important for me to I get invited and asked to do a lot of presentations, do a lot of talks about equine-assisted services. So it's my job to be out there spreading the word and educating people on what equine-assisted services are. And last but definitely not least, because it's probably one of the favorite parts of my job, is being out with members, interacting with members, finding out what do you need, what's working, what's not, what can PATH International do in order to better support you in providing your services. Same thing for the credentialed professionals. What's working, what's not, what can PATH International do as we develop these credentials in order to make sure everybody is providing the best service possible. One of the questions that you sent me ahead of time potentially was, let's see, how did you put it? What's the favorite and hardest part of my job? And I had to really think about that, and I realized that the answer is the same for both. My favorite part of the job is the people, and the hardest part of the job is the people. Now, my answer would have been different pre-pandemic, because my favorite part of the job is the people, because I love our members. I love our board of directors. I love our staff. I love interacting with people. I love listening and hearing what it is they need, and then figuring out if we can provide it, and how do we just make the entire industry better. And I get fed by that. So I traveled to a lot of regional conferences, did a lot of presentations. I got invited to a lot of national conferences, all of that sort of thing. And I was fed by that. Well, pandemic, no traveling, no gathering. And so I'm still doing all of those interactions, but now it's over Zoom. And so I am spending probably 5 to 6 hours every single day in Zoom meetings, doing presentations on Zoom calls, and it is just draining. And the part that makes people my favorite, which is they're all diverse, they have different opinions, they've got different needs and different wants, gets really hard when you're trying to manage that over Zoom, and it's constant. I said the other day, there are too many ways to communicate with me. Because they go off at the same time. You know, there's Zoom calls, there's emails, there's Messenger over Facebook, which, by the way, anybody listening, I really don't like messages over Messenger because it's hard for me to track them.
Yes,
yeah. There's text messages, there's team messages. And, you know, I want to respond to everybody and respond quickly and try to help everybody. And it just gets to be too much. So that'll shift back once we can gather again. But I just thought it was kind of interesting that my answer is the same to both right now.
I would agree. Our CEO at Hetra she must get 4 million emails a day. I don't know, and she has commented the same, that it's hard to manage everybody when you can't just meet in person and, get what you need to get done and that type of thing. And I think too, there's something to be said about managing people from email, or from behind a computer, where I'm very much a people person as well. I love to be in person, and I really feed off of that body language. And even I talked on our last podcast about my bubble. My bubble's very small, so I'm a toucher and a hugger too. So that's been hard for me, but just interacting with people non-verbally and being around them, I think is a huge part of communication, and that gets lost in this virtual age that we're in right now, for sure.
Absolutely.
This episode is sponsored by Equiforce. Equiforce is a database that allows you to track every facet of your organization, from horse, donor, and volunteer management to scheduling, grant tracking, incident reports, and tracking participant progress too. This is not a one-size-fits-all setup. Instead, Equiforce personally works with you to learn how your facility functions and takes note of your specific terminology so that they can create a unique system to match the needs of your organization. And of course, Equiforce provides an ongoing training and support so that your database can grow with you. Visit them at www.equiforce.com. That's EQUI-FORCE.com. How did you end up with PATH International in the position that you're in?
My route to PATH International and to this industry is a little bit different than most people, although there's more following my particular path. No pun intended. My background is in nonprofit management, and I started in live theater management. So I spent the first 15 years of my working life, or my after college working life, working in live theater in administration. And I'm going to back up one little step to say that I'm a suburb kid. I did not grow up around horses. My father was a pastor and a marriage and family counselor. And however, when my mom was cleaning out the basement and getting rid of everything, she said, "Here, take all your drawings from when you were 5 years old." And I said, "Okay, fine." And every single drawing had a horse in it. Not a very good one, but it had a horse in it. And I thought, wow, isn't that interesting? So anyway, fast forward 15 years in live theater. And the next step in my career, the next natural step would have been to become a managing director. And I realized that I didn't have the kind of passion it took to be a managing director. I'd learned all these skills. I knew how to run a nonprofit. I knew how to fundraise. I think theater is important, but I didn't have the passion to turn to you, for example, and say, you need to put your money here because this is the best place for it in fundraising, right? So I embarked on a little bit of a journey saying, well, so what do I feel passionate about? And I knew it had something to do with animals and people together. And me getting into this industry was a little bit of luck and a lot of hard work. And the hard work was learning how to run a nonprofit as well as exploring options. Where could I work that had animals and people together kind of thing? And the luck was seeing an ad for the executive director position at Little Bit Therapeutic Riding Center now in Redmond, Washington. I didn't even know it existed. It had already been around by, I think, almost 20 years by then. And it was in my backyard. And I went to interview. I remember walking into the barn and taking a deep breath and smelling the horses and the manure and the hay and thinking, oh my gosh, this is home. I have come home. And so then I just had to convince them, which wasn't easy, to be honest. They offered to somebody else first because they were used to someone with a horse background being the executive director. And here I had nothing. But I convinced them. I said, look, you want me running the organization. You do not want me in the barn figuring out what to feed the horses. You have someone to do that. And so then I was at Little Bit Therapeutic Riding Center for 15 years. During that time, I volunteered for NARA, now PATH International, was a region rep. I was on the board of directors, I was on the administrative committee. I did all sorts of volunteering and really got to know PATH International. Loved Little Bit, loved working there, loved the community, loved the people, loved the horses, loved the staff. I did a whole capital campaign, moved us into an new $11 million facility. You know, I didn't think I'd ever leave. I'll be perfectly honest. I thought I was there forever. And then I volunteered to lead the strategic planning process for PATH International. And right after I did that, the CEO retired. And I got a call from a then board member saying, had you thought about applying? And I said, no, I love where I am. And he said, well, just think about it. And I did. And the reality is, having led the strategic planning process, I was really excited about where PATH International was headed. And I thought I could be a part of that. I could be a part of this direction. And so I applied and was hired. And luckily, I have a partner who he was willing and able to move to Colorado with me, even though he still commutes back to Seattle every other week for work, even during the pandemic. And he's been doing that for 6 years. But I'm not sure I would have been brave enough to do it without his support. So then I moved here 6 years ago and took the job, and it's everything I could possibly hope. I love this work.
Goosebumps all over the place. Like the you talking about how you walk into the barn and you take a deep breath and it smells like home. That's it. That's it for so many of us. And even, for people that didn't grow up with horses, we have a lot of people on our staff, administrative and otherwise. We have people that are PATH certified instructors now that didn't grow up with a single horse or was ever around them until, they came to us. And it really is something that that is it's in your soul. It just gets down deep in there, and you can't deny it.
I completely agree. There's nothing like it. There's nothing like that feeling of I found my home. And I will say that I was someone with my background was unusual coming into this industry back then. But more and more centers are recognizing that an executive director, it's honestly more important that they have nonprofit leadership experience than that they have horse experience, as long as you don't need them to also be teaching lessons or taking care of the horses. And I learned a lot. I mean, that was the added benefit for me, is I immediately started taking riding lessons in an inclusive class at Little Bit. I spent Thanksgivings mucking stalls so the staff could have that day off. I learned as much as I possibly could. And I love that as well.
And that's what's so wonderful about our profession in general, is that if you think you know everything there is to know, then might not be the job for you. So
you're absolutely right. You're absolutely right.
Curious, when you started making this big transition, into being with PATH International and doing those things, what types of personal or, professional development things have you done? I know at Hetra, we've been talking a lot lately about just personal development and finding, what's your personal mission statement, or, where do you as a person find time to develop yourself so that you can develop your organization? Is there anything specifically that you had found helpful or that you did to help?
I would say there are two things. One is that I went into counseling. I did therapy for many years. And yes, that's a very personal thing, and that is really about my personal development, but it is absolutely the best thing I could have ever done. I really felt that helped me come into my own and helped me gain the confidence to be a leader. So I would do it all over again. I sometimes joke with my partner Bill that I paid thousands of dollars for him. Because I honestly believe that therapy got me to a point where I could have this amazing, really great relationship with somebody else. So that personally, that's the one thing I did. Professionally, the professional development for me was all about creating circles of colleagues. The administrators committee from PATH International was incredibly valuable, both for support as well as my own growth, as well as, if I had a problem, I had a group to go to, and we would give feedback to each other and help each other. And by the time, I relied on this so much. Back in Washington, I was part of a professional development group, and it was five women, and 2 of us were executive directors, and 3 were organizational development people. They were individual consultants. They typically were interim executive directors at various nonprofits, or they went in and did strategic planning processes. The other executive director was with the Humane Society. So it was nonprofit, but it was outside of the industry realm, because there's a lot of crossover, of course, in what you need to learn and what you need to do. So I credit having those different groups. By the time I moved here to Colorado, I think I was a part of, I was a part of 3 different local groups back in Seattle of nonprofit leaders with different, one was the professional development group, another one was a group of disability organization leaders, another one was a group of human service organization leaders, and we didn't meet all the time. I mean, that would be crazy making. But one group I met quarterly, another group it was monthly, that sort of thing. And it is truly, I believe, what made me the leader I am today, was having that support and having colleagues to bounce things off of. And it's what, and I know this is a podcast and it's not an advertisement, but I will say it's why PATH International, we created innovation circles that we just launched this at the first of this year. And it's based on this idea of giving education and content, but also providing a space for people to create those kinds of groups for ongoing support.
I love that. And of course, I'm a people person, you know that. So I am like, yes, tell me more. I'm all jazzed up about this, these groups and bouncing ideas around. And I think it's important that we meet, like at Hetro, we meet every week. We have a all staff meeting, and it is long. They are long meetings sometimes, but it is so good just to bounce everything off each other and learn and grow. But then there's also to be said about like what you had done, which is growing with other professionals that aren't within your, your realm, so to speak, of like, therapeutic horsemanship or, anything like that, that it's something different. And I think that's really amazing too. How did you find groups like that? Did you just stumble upon them?
Let's see. One of the first one, the professional development group, I was just very lucky because one of the organizational consultants had been the interim executive director at Little Bit before I was hired, right before I was hired. And so she told me afterwards that she'd been thinking about starting this group. Was I interested? And I felt very blessed because here I was, a brand new executive director. Everybody else in the group was way more experienced than I was. But she saw something in me and invited me to join. Another one, I kind of started to put the call out to human service providers on the east side of Seattle, trying to find a good fit of executive directors that wanted to meet. So some of it's been creating and some of it's been inviting. The administrators committee, Dana Butler-Moberg, who runs the Shea Center. So creating a group to a great extent was Dana's idea. And when I first met Dana, which I think was at my second national conference, NAR conference, when I first met Dana, I was like, okay, she is one of my people. I need to connect with her because I want to be a part of a group with her. And so I joke now with Dana that I feel like that at that time, I just kind of followed her around like a little puppy dog at that conference. Like, I'm here. Can I help you? Can I help you with something? And Dana says, of course, she doesn't remember it like that at all, but that's sort of how it felt. But from there was born this idea of putting a group of therapeutic writing executive directors together to be able to brainstorm and help each other.
Sometimes you just meet people in life that their personality or their vibe is just electric, and you just feel your body, your soul just craves that. And creating things and sharing brains with someone that's like that is truly invaluable. I agree. This podcast is presented by Hetro University, an educational arm of the Heartland Equine Therapeutic Riding Academy. Hetro University's mission is to provide high-quality educational offerings to our participants and the Equine-assisted Services community. Craving more content like this? We invite you to check out our series of webinars and much, much more over at hetrouniversity.org. If you'd like to help us work toward our mission, you can make a donation by clicking on the link in the show notes below or visit us at hetro.org. Don't forget to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Again, my biggest thanks to you all for helping Hetro change lives one stride at a time.